It's another day and another episode of Signed and Committed, Part 5. And in this episode, we are going to insert text. There may be a font that I am using that you do not have on your computer. So I'll show you a quick way to add fonts to Photoshop and to your computer, if it's a Mac, that is. I'm not overly familiar with how to do that with a PC. I'm guessing, hoping that it's somewhat similar. But if you are watching this series and you are in one of my classes, you are most likely using a Mac. So that's the method that we're going to use today, adding fonts to Photoshop and to your Mac. We're going to be adding fonts. Again, quick review. We are making one of these guys here, a poster, a Koa poncho. This is likely going to be your final project of the year. There might be one other small one or a couple small ones, but this will likely be the last major project of the year, making this signed and committed poster of Koa poncho. There's what the end result would look like, or should look like. Here is what is our motivation for doing this. We are attempting to copy, replicate this poster of Jake Wiley. Jake Wiley, Newport grad, NBA player, and Eastern Washington University graduate, All-American. Eastern Washington created this poster to celebrate Jake's accomplishments, and I got my hands on one of these, we are going to try to duplicate that. One has already been duplicated. This poster right here is an attempt at duplicating the concept of the Jake Wiley poster. Obviously, it's not exact. There are a variety of things different with the Jake Wiley poster. When you look at the Jake Wiley poster and compare it to the Koa poncho poster, there's a number of things that are different. We've discussed many of those items through this series already. So it's not an exact duplicate, but the concept we are borrowing. We are copying, if you will. The fonts are not exactly the same. The smoke is not exactly the same. Instead of a hardwood image in the background at limited opacity, we have a football field in the background with limited opacity. And then you can just pick out the differences, if you will. But this is what we are attempting to accomplish. To this point, let me move these things out of the way. To this point, this is what we have accomplished. Where was my Jake Wiley poster? That's not it. There's my Jake Wiley poster. Let me minimize that. So, our Jake Wiley poster here in the lower right-hand corner, the elements that we have replicated or duplicated up to this point, on the Jake Wiley poster, there are logos of the NBA and Eastern Washington University. There's Jake Wiley in his EWU jersey, and the Brooklyn Nets logo in the background. He is signed. That's the theme of Jake's poster that he signed. Undrafted, but he did sign an NBA professional contract with the Brooklyn Nets. He did play in regular season games, accumulated statistics, points, rebounds, and assists, and of course a title in EWU there. What we have done here with the Koa poncho poster, we have done some similar items. The two logos, one being the NCAA, and Whitworth College is an NCAA affiliate, Division III football team. That's where Koa is going to play. That's who he's going to play for. And of course, lower left-hand corner, we have the Mick Schultz Grizzly logo as well. Just like Jake is in his EWU jersey, Koa is in his Newport Grizzlies football jersey, holding a football. And just like in the Jake Wiley poster, there is a photo, an action photo of Jake, where it is the opacity has been diminished. It is somewhat transparent. Same thing over here with Koa, a picture in action photo from earlier this year, where Koa was rolling out, getting ready to pass the ball. That is not full opacity. Instead of Brooklyn Nets, we have Whitworth Pirates. Now, the only thing that really is missing now are the titles. Jake Wiley, Eastern Washington University, and signed. Over here, for the Newport Koa poncho poster, we are going to do something similar. It's going to look like this eventually. Koa poncho, Newport High School, and down below it's going to say committed. So whereas Jake Wiley's poster says signed, Koa's poster is going to say committed. And of course, instead of Jake Wiley, we're talking about Koa Poncho from Newport High School instead of Jacob Wiley from Eastern Washington. So today, this episode, we are going to be inserting some of this text. I will show you how to insert the committed, and then you will use the same types of techniques, and you will create your own committed text as well as Koa Poncho Newport High School. Depending on how much time this takes and how complex I make this, I often make things a little bit more difficult than they really have to be. I'm no expert at Photoshop, so the way I go about doing things sometimes is the long way. And real Photoshop experts, they can get the same thing done in just a fraction of the time that I can. I've learned my Photoshop techniques out of practicality, YouTube, of course, a few people over my shoulder teaching me how to do things, but it's basically hands-on experience, teaching myself as I go, doing practical things that we use in our media outlet here at Newport High School, whether it is posters or programs, advertisements. The types of things that we create around here are all practical in nature. It's not just make-believe whimsical stuff, but it's all practical type of things that we use for practical purposes in applications, and this is one of them. And the way I have gone about teaching myself to do these things may not be the most efficient way, but it works. So we are going to insert text today. Now, if you notice here in the completed project, I will click on Koa Poncho. Up above here, the text that we are using on this project is called Bombardier. On your computer, it's likely not going to be there. In the event that it is not there, that means it's a font that we will have to add. So let's start with adding a font to your computer. So let me minimize a bunch of this junk. We will bring up Chrome, Google Chrome. And if you're starting fresh here, just say free font. Let's see, I've done it already. It says free font download. Free font download. Well, that wasn't spelled right. And the top hit that comes up is a website called dafont.com. It's filled full of a bunch of fonts that are absolutely free, and you can download them, add them to your computer, and it's easy peasy. So here's dafont.com. I'm going to click on Techno just to show you some of the cool stuff here. A couple of the top hits for Techno free fonts. One is the Vengeance Heroic Avenger font that you could download. Here's the Star Jedi. They kind of a Star Wars takeoff. If I wanted that Star Jedi font, I would just simply click download. In my Finder, let's just ensure or confirm that it is there. In my Finder downloads, there it is. Double click on the zip file. It should unzip for me. And there it is, Star Jedi. I'm going to bring that over to my desktop. And there is the folder. I'm going to double click just to see what's inside. Ooh, there's like 4 different variations. Hopefully this is going to work out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Minimize my Google Chrome window. And I'm going to go to my Finder up in the upper right-hand corner. Can you see that little looking glass doohickey? I click that, and I'm just going to search for my font book. Here it is, and these are the fonts that I've added recently. All the fonts on my computer I click, and oh my goodness, there's a bunch of them. But the ones that I have recently added, they are here, and you'll see Bombardier is one of those fonts that I have added recently. And it gives you an example of what those fonts look like. If I want to add an additional font, I just hit the plus button to add. Let's go to my desktop where I have that Star Jedi. And there are the fonts. It's validating them. Ooh. And if I click to see what they look like, oh, there they are. Star Jedi Hollow, double line. There's all sorts of cool stuff here. So it's given me actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fonts that are kind of Star Wars-esque-ish, called Star Jedi. Now, just to confirm that I actually have them, if I go to my project and I click my doohickey down arrow, I think I just saw them. Stick, start. Yep, they're there. So yeah, it's as simple as that. Adding text or adding fonts to your computer can be as simple as what I just did right there. Go to that website, defont.com, and there's hundreds, maybe thousands of different fonts, totally free. Download them, enter into your font book, add it to there, and you'll be able to manipulate and use those fonts. In Photoshop, as long as those fonts are in your font book on your Mac, you should be able to access those fonts in basically any application, whether it's a Microsoft Word document, Photoshop, InDesign, they should be there. So that's what we've done. I don't want to use Star Wars, that particular font, however, but I want to use Bombardier, which is one that I downloaded earlier. And let's see there, Bombardier. Oops. Okay. And there we have a font, and it's really similar to the font previous on the completed project of Koa Poncho. Ooh boy, the size is just about there too. So the placement's just a little bit off, but there we have Koa Poncho in the Bombardier font, and it is placed in our project appropriately. The scale looks pretty good. It's almost exactly the same as the finished product. Its positioning is pretty good. I'm okay and acceptable of it where it's at right now. And there we have an inserted font. We have a title, Koa Poncho. And now the next step is to make Koa Poncho in its simple, plain, black font. Make it look like Koa Poncho with all of the effects in the finished product. So let's take care of this. There's Koa Poncho, the way it looks completed. There's Koa Poncho uncompleted. Now, we have tons and tons of things we can do here to make this look the way it needs to look. I'll just tell you up front, however, to begin with, we are going to need a duplicate copy of this, this layer. So I'm going to right-click, duplicate layer. And just as an insurance policy, I'm going to make one more duplicate layer. If I mess up on the next two layers, I can always go back to an original layer and start fresh, start new. For now, let's attempt to manipulate the first layer. It's in black, and it's just plain black Bombardier font, Koa Poncho. Eventually, we want it to look like that. There are a number of things here that were done, and I may not get it exactly perfect, but I'm going to attempt to implement or include the effects on this font that we did on this one here. Just looking at it, I can see there's a couple different things that just right off the bat I'm assuming were done. One is that there is a stroke applied around Koa and Poncho. Whether it's white or gray, there is a stroke applied around Koa Poncho. There is also a gradient applied to each one of these. So there's just a couple simple effects to get Koa Poncho like this to look like this. Now, each one of these will have to be done layer by layer. Koa is K-O-A, the first name Koa, is going to be done in one layer, and then we'll activate Poncho in the other layer so that it is red. So there's going to be black Koa, red Poncho, with similar effects, stroke around both. Gradient effects are going to be slightly different in each, but it is just a gradient effect with a little bit of variation. So let's start with Koa, and in order to get to the effects panel, we'll just double-click over here in the layer. Come on, double-click. There we go, and the layer style panel will come up, where I have a variety of different effects. If I want to apply a stroke, I click that little tab, stroke, and then I click on stroke itself, and it gives me the different options of that I have with adjusting stroke. the structure, the fill type, so on and so forth. The first thing I want to adjust is just the color itself. And instead of it being black, I'm going to make it somewhat of a grayish color. I cannot see it very well because it's not very, the size is not very great. So if I add or increase the stroke size, notice how the stroke around the words get bigger and bigger. There is like a 27-point stroke. Is that right? Let me go down to like 23. See how that looks. If I click OK and then compare it to the original, it's close. Okay, the color is just a little bit different, and you can tweak and play with the color to get it just right. But we have applied a stroke. It is slightly gray, not totally white, and it's at 24 with regard to its size, and it's positioned on the outside. That's all good. Now the next thing we want to apply is a gradient overlay. And in order to get to the gradient overlay options, not only click the box, but then click on gradient overlay itself, and over here you can see it gives you the different gradient options. Right now the gradient that is chosen is a singular gradient that goes from black to gray, much like our background earlier in this project. If I click on the gradient option, though, it will give me a variety of different gradient options. We want one that has basically 3 color varieties, going from one color to a middle color and then the next color. And let's choose this right here. It is blue, yellow, blue, but down here it gives us, in our gradient type options in our editor, it gives us the ability to change those colors. So if I click on the first color, which is blue, and turn it back to black, notice the lower part of Koa turns into black. For now, I'll click OK. Over here, the other blue, I can change that color to black. Now, if Koa was a Cusick panther, right now we would have some pretty good colors going on. Kind of black, yellowish, and black, but he's a Newport Grizzly. So let's change that middle yellow to more of a Newport Grizzly red. And that's a little pinkish. Let's get more towards the Newport Grizzly red, and there we go. We have something that looks a little bit more like Newport Grizzly colors. For the time being, I'm going to click OK on both of those. And let's just compare it to our original or our end product, what we want it to look like. And I'm just a little backwards here. Instead of red in the middle, we actually want it to be kind of a silverish white in the middle. So that can be done. I'm going to bring up our panels again. And instead of that middle color being red, we are going to change it to kind of a whitish silver. Okay, I'm going to click OK for now, and then compare the two. Our whitish silver in the middle is quite a bit wider and bigger than the whitish silver that is in Koa on the finished product. We go back to making some modifications then. And we do that by grabbing these little bars. I'm sure there's an actual name for these things. In the radio industry, we call these scrubbers. In Photoshop language, I don't know what they're called. But there we go, and we can even adjust where that middle is going to be. Maybe we want it down a little bit farther. And so if we adjust like that, and what's that look like? I'm going to click OK, OK. As far as Koa is concerned, we're pretty close. Okay, so I got distracted. Back to Koa Poncho. We've got this like middle part here, and when we compare it to the first, it's a little different, just a little bit different, not much, and that can be attributed to the adjustments that need to be made in the gradient panel. If you tinker with that, play with it, you'll be able to get it. It's not a problem. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and before you get exactly what you're looking for there. That can be adjusted in smoothness, maybe opacity, but it's all modifications that can be made to get the right effect on Koa. So, but for now, however, I'm going to say I'm fine with that Koa being close enough to the original Koa that we're looking for. It's a little bit blacker, a little bit darker, but for now, it has enough of an effect that's going to make me happy for the time being. Now let's affect that. Let's go to Poncho, and we are going to tweak Poncho so that it has a similar look and style as this here. Now, in order to do that, it's the same process as the first attempt that we had with that. But now we're going to turn Poncho into a red effect. Double click on the layer. First of all, let's add that stroke. Click on stroke to get the editing capabilities. And I believe the stroke that we used was somewhere in that vicinity. And we adjusted it. Click OK. Adjusted up to 24%. You can actually type that in specifically if you really wanted to. Let me see here. I'm gonna make that other Koa Poncho visible just to see. In fact, let's go to that Koa Poncho. See what the stroke color is. It's about right there. That's fine. Now, if you really wanted to be absolutely exacting, one thing you could do is you could take these numbers here and add them or insert them into the other stroke color screen to get the exact stroke color. Or you can just eyeball it here and think it's like right there. 33, 26, 27. Go to this layer. $33, 26. Oops, was that 26? Did I say 37? 27 maybe? Must have been 27. Maybe? Oh, and this was 0. If I click OK, OK, now let's compare and see what they look like. Look at the stroke, and I'm revealing and hiding that top layer, and the stroke colors look pretty darn the same. Good enough. Okay, so we got the stroke taken care of. Now let's take care of the gradient overlay. And in this particular situation, we want, if I recall, like 5 different colors. So let's go with that's 3, that's a couple or whatever, and let's go with bam. Let's try that one. No, that's only. Let's try this one. Ooh, there's a bunch of colors there. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. No, I'm not. I need to go back. And actually, for the moment, I'm going to click OK just to see what the end result looks like. It's supposed to be red to gray to red to gray to red. And now we got all of that going on. So back down to gradient overlay. Let's choose that. Now, the first thing that we can do, notice it's a straight gradient overlay. In our finished product, it's actually at a slight angle. So the first thing we can do before we adjust the colors is we can adjust the angle of the overlay. Ooh, that's pretty drastic. Let's go back to something like, and you can see right here, it gives you a preview of the angle that we're looking for. And for now, I'm going to say that that angle at 103 degrees is okay. Now let's go change the colors. We are starting with the Newport Red, somewhere in that vicinity. And every other one, we're going to do the same thing. And let's see here. And every other one. And I'm not being absolutely exacting on the color, but we're getting a good ballpark. Okay. Now the middle ones, we're looking for that silverish color again. And what was that color? I forget. 30, dear Bob. I'm going to have to go back to my other panel. And the gradient, it was the stroke, was 33, 26, 27. 33, 26, 27. $33, $26, $27. Click OK to there. We want to adjust this one. And we've got a similar color there. Now again, there are other ways of doing this, but I ain't no expert. If I fiddled with this for a while, I could figure out those other ways. Maybe creating a specific swatch and programming it to be easier to manipulate and to identify and to insert. Adjusting the color numbers, that works too. So now we have a situation where to make it look like the original, we just start tinkering with the different adjustments here and getting them to be wherever. And that's not perfect, but if I stop right there just to make a comparison with the original, give me an idea of where we're at. Ooh, way darker red. In fact, it looks like we are using the red here from his jersey instead of the Newport red. So that can be done. If I go to Koa, click on his picture, and I use my sampling tool. Where is my sampling tool? Eraser, bump, 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 bump. Oh, there's my sampling tool right there. And I hold down my Option key and click a couple times. It provides that particular color. And by double clicking on that, oops, where did it go? Up here, it is showing you what the numbers are for that. I can write those numbers down. I can also create this as a specific color. But now I know what that color is supposed to be. I go back to the layer I'm working on, and I can insert those particular colors. And the end result, yep, it should be more of a Whitworth color. There we go. Now, those of you that have extended Photoshop knowledge, you're probably asking yourself, well, why isn't he using a different technique to do this way quicker? I think I've already explained that. I'm recording myself at the moment. I could spend more time tinkering trying to figure it out. And I've done it before. I've even used other methods, but right now this is the method that comes to mind quickest. And I know it's exact, that the colors are going to have the same formula. And it's going to be the exact same color as his shoulder pad right there. So, okay. And I can start to... Okay, it's a little bit different. What we've done here, it's kind of a silver. And what they've got going on is kind of a gray. If we want to change that, we still can. We just open up our gradient overlay stuff, and we change what it looks like. For now, though, instead of spending a bunch of time tinkering and tweaking it, that's something that you can do yourself. You can change the colors of the gradient through Poncho to look more like the original if you like. I'll leave that up to you. That's something that you can do on your own. But right now we have Koa. We have Koa and we have Poncho. And the way that I go about doing this might be a little bit different than normal, but the first uh, the first one up above is black. Let's see here. Whoops. And in order to get Koa in black, move tool, put that right over the top of Koa. There we go. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty similar. And with time, you can tinker with the Koa, the Poncho, the gradient, and the stroke to make it look almost identical. I would not want this to be my final product. The way that the gradient is going through Poncho kind of distorts the view of it, so I would want to sharpen that up so that it doesn't take away from the word Poncho so much. It's a little hazy, it's a little distorted, and I would want to tweak and manipulate that gradient tool so that it works better with the word Poncho. Koa's not bad. I could probably settle with Koa. But the Poncho I don't like. And it would just take time manipulating the various things to make it do what I want it to do. Now, so I've got Koa Poncho, the title, and using a similar type of process, I can insert committed as well. The only thing that's different between our heading or our title Koa Poncho and the other text that's inserted with Newport High School and committed is that on Newport High School, there is actually a text box behind Newport High School, and there's two layers there. So if I click on layer and I click and I enter, I don't remember exactly what type of font I used there, but I'm just going to use Arial to begin with. Whoops. And the font size is ginormous, so I'm not able to see it. Let's see here. Boom, boom, like that. Make it a font size that will be visible. Newport High School. And I have a character adjustment over here, and I can try to find the size of font that is more similar to the original. It's a little close together, so I can adjust that here in this panel. And I'll just attempt to do this quickly. The color of the font is black, and I want to change that to white. And I'm going to open up my layer style panel, and I want to apply a stroke, and I'm going to apply black, but I want it to be a little bit heavier than that. Not much. There we go. And so to begin with, I've put in Newport High School. Obviously, it is not the same font. It's not the same size. I can tinker with that later. But I do have Newport High School in black. And in order to get the red background, I'm just going to use my tool here, my rectangle tool. And I'm just going to adjust adjust where those layers are, put the red behind, and there I've got Newport High School. Now, the Newport High School red, the rectangle box there, that is a red that is more like the shoulder pads and the Whitworth red, or crimson, if you will. If I want to change that background of Newport High School to be more of the more commonly current accepted red, I would just change the color to something like that. So I know it doesn't look exactly the same, but with some tinkering, that can be changed quite easily. I can make the font taller. I can make the words a little bit wider. I can spread them out a little bit more. There's a number of things that I can do to try to replicate that other font. I think I went a little bit too far, however. And if I want to put in specific numbers, I can. And suddenly we're getting a lot closer to the original. So there's what we've got. There's the original. If you want to modify or change the size of the the rectangular box behind it, you can. You can do that freehand. You can adjust the size of the font, and you can tinker with it all day long if you like to get that red exactly like that red, and to get that font exactly the same size and proportions as that font. But what we have done is we have inserted Koa Poncho. We have put a stroke around it. We have put a gradient effect on both the Koa and the Poncho in multiple layers. We have inserted a rectangular box as a background for our Newport High School text and font. And we have gone to a point where we have inserted and started to adjust the characteristics of this font to start to get closer to looking like what our end result needs to be.